The airport was buzzing with travelers rushing to catch their flights, but one moment brought everything to a halt. A well-dressed black man stepped up to the first-class boarding lane, ticket in hand, ready to board. But before he could take another step, the gate agent blocked his way. "This line is for first-class passengers only," she said firmly, her eyes scanning him with doubt. He remained calm, explaining that he was, in fact, flying first class. Still, she refused to let him through, insisting he must have made a mistake. Other passengers watched in silence, some exchanging awkward glances. But what happened next left everyone speechless. When a senior staff member intervened and checked the passenger's name, the truth came out. He wasn't just a first-class traveler. He owned the entire airline. The gate agent's face turned pale as reality sank in, and then everything changed. The gate agent's hands trembled as she stared at the boarding pass again, her mind racing. How could this be possible? She had been so sure, so confident in turning him away. The whispers around them grew louder. A few passengers pulled out their phones, sensing something big was happening. The senior staff member quickly stepped in, offering an apology, but the damage was already done. The man, still calm, studied the agent for a long moment. His expression didn't show anger, just disappointment. "Would you have questioned me if I looked different?" he finally asked. The question hung in the air, heavy with meaning. The agent swallowed hard, glancing at her co-workers as if searching for an escape. By now, more employees had gathered, some recognizing him immediately. Their faces shifted from confusion to pure shock, and just when the tension couldn't get any thicker, he reached into his pocket. The gate agent's breath hitched as he pulled out a sleek black wallet. For a brief second, she feared he was about to demand some kind of proof or call security on her instead. But instead, he calmly took out a business card and handed it to the senior staff member. The woman's eyes widened as she read the name. A hushed gasp escaped her lips. The growing crowd leaned in, sensing something bigger unfolding. A nearby pilot, who had been watching from a distance, suddenly stiffened. He recognized the name too. The owner of the airline wasn't just any businessman. He was a self-made success, known for breaking barriers in the industry. Yet, here he was, being denied the very service he had built. The gate agent's face turned red. I didn't know," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. But the man simply raised an eyebrow. "And if I wasn't the owner?" he asked. "Then what?" Silence. No one had an answer. The tension in the air was suffocating. The gate agent stood frozen, her mind scrambling for a response, but nothing came. The senior staff member cleared their throat, stepping forward in an attempt to smooth things over, but the damage had already been done. The passengers watching from the first-class line exchanged looks, some uneasy, others embarrassed for the agent. The murmurs grew louder. A security officer, noticing the commotion, walked over. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his eyes shifting between the man and the agent. The agent hesitated before answering. Would she admit her mistake? Would she try to shift blame? But before she could speak, another airline executive rushed onto the scene, looking flustered. One glance at the man, and their expression turned to pure panic. "Sir, I had no idea you were flying today," they said hurriedly. The gate agent's stomach dropped. Now, everyone knew. But the real question remained, what was he going to do next? The man remained silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. The gate agent fidgeted, the weight of 100 eyes pressing down on her. The airline executive, now visibly nervous, forced a tight smile. "Sir, if there's anything we can do." But before they could finish, the man finally spoke. "I don't want special treatment," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I want to know if this happens to other passengers when no one's watching." A hush fell over the group. The gate agent's face paled even more. She opened her mouth as if to defend herself but quickly shut it. She knew there was nothing she could say. The executive swallowed hard. "I assure you, this was just a misunderstanding." The man's sharp gaze cut through the excuse. He pulled out his phone, tapping the screen a few times. Then, with a flick of a finger, he turned it around, revealing a live video recording. He had captured everything. The gasps around him confirmed what the gate agent already knew. This was no longer just an uncomfortable moment. It was about to become something much bigger. The silence was deafening. The gate agent's hands clenched at her sides as she stared at the screen. The video had captured everything: her dismissive tone, her refusal to let him board, the moment she realized who he was. She knew this wasn't just about her anymore. This was about the airline, its policies, and how many others had been treated the same way when no cameras were rolling. The executive's face turned red. "Sir, please, let's discuss this privately," they pleaded, glancing around at the onlookers. But the man shook his head. "No, because when this happens to someone else, it's never private. It's humiliating." A tense beat passed before he finally spoke again. "I built this airline to be different. Clearly, we have work to do." His voice was steady, but his disappointment was clear. He turned to the gate agent. "You made an assumption about me. Now, I have to make a decision about you." Her breath caught. Was she about to lose her job? The audience held its breath, waiting. Then, the man did something no one expected. He looked back at the executive. "I don't want her fired," he said, surprising even the agent. "I want her trained. I want the entire staff trained." The executive exhaled in relief, nodding eagerly. "Of course, sir. We'll start immediately." The man turned to the agent one last time. "Next time, don't judge someone by how they look," he said simply before walking past her, boarding pass in hand. The crowd slowly parted as he stepped onto the plane, leaving behind a lesson no one would forget. As the man disappeared down the jet bridge, the gate agent let out a shaky breath. The crowd slowly dispersed, but the weight of what had just happened still hung in the air. Some passengers exchanged quiet words. Others glanced at the agent with a mix of pity and judgment before moving on. She knew her mistake would stay with her long after this moment ended. The executive placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "You have a chance to do better," they said. "Take it." She nodded, realizing this wasn't just about keeping her job. It was about changing how she saw people. Meanwhile, the man settled into his first-class seat, gazing out the window as the plane prepared for takeoff. He hadn't set out to teach a lesson today, but sometimes life had other plans. With a deep breath, he closed his eyes. Change didn't happen overnight, but this was a start.